At 3 a.m., you are awake again, replaying the thing you said in ninth grade, and your stomach clenches as if it is happening right now. Your face heats, and a familiar thought arrives. Why does this memory never die? The misunderstanding here costs you more than sleep. It feeds a quiet calculation in your head, a voice that says the safest way to avoid that feeling again is to say less, risk less, become smaller. Here is the truth that changes the math. The replay is not a bad memory. It is a false alarm, and the confusion behind it can be switched off. Start with the strangest part of the experience. The memory has a body. You do not simply recall the sentence you said. You feel the heat in your cheeks, the tightness in your stomach, a small surge of adrenaline as if someone is watching you right now. Think about what that tells you. A memory is usually treated as a record of the past, stored somewhere like a file on a hard drive. But the Cringe replay is not a file retrieval. It is a full-body production, and your body does not do the past. Your body only does the present. So when the Cringe hits, you are not remembering an old feeling. You are having the feeling again from scratch decades later. That is the core mystery, and the answer lives deep in the brain's wiring. The reason lies in the architecture of memory itself. Your brain does not store memories as neutral facts. Each memory is stored with a marker, a tag that tells your brain how much this moment matters. That tag is written by the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure that specializes in detecting threats. When the original embarrassment happened, your amygdala wrote a strong marker. Something went wrong here. Something has consequences here. And when you later recall the memory, your brain does not just open a file. It reruns the marker, and the marker fires the same alarm system that fired during the original event. From the brain's perspective, remembering an embarrassing moment is not that different from being embarrassed right now. The scene is in the past. The threat signal is not. Then why does embarrassment hit the body this hard? Harder than many other bad memories? Because social pain and physical pain share real estate in the brain. Brain imaging studies show that being socially rejected activates the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, the same regions that process the unpleasantness of physical injury. Your nervous system is wired to treat exclusion from the group as a survival threat. That was a smart evolutionary move. A loner in a pre-human tribe rarely survived long. So when you replay the moment you said the wrong thing, your brain reads a social injury. The stomach clench is your gut preparing for something. The face heat is blood rushing to your skin. These are threat responses, and they are completely appropriate if the threat is actually in the room with you. It is not. There is no audience, no teacher, no judging faces. Just you, under a blanket, years later, telling your own threat system that a ghost is a burglar. But why does this fire at 3 a.m. and not while you are cooking dinner? The answer is that the Cringe replay is not a random glitch. It is what your brain does with spare time. When you are busy, your brain spends its energy on the outside world. When you lie down in the dark, with no input and no tasks, the default mode network takes over. That is a set of connected brain regions that light up when you are not focused on anything external. Its job includes self-reflection, autobiographical memory, and thinking about what other people think of you. At 3 a.m., that network has nothing to do but comb through unresolved files and try to fix them. The Cringe replay is a problem-solving attempt. Your brain has flagged the ninth grade moment as an unsolved social problem, so it runs the tape over and over, looking for the instant where the outcome could be changed. It cannot be changed. The embarrassing thing happened, and no amount of replaying produces a different result. But your brain does not know that, so it loops. Here is the part that makes the loop worse. Every replay can strengthen the memory. When you recall a memory, your brain does not read a stable file. It reconstructs the memory from fragments, and then it stores it again. Psychologists call this reconsolidation. If you recall the memory with the same embarrassment, the same clenched stomach, you are effectively resaving the file with a fresh coat of shame. So the nightly replay does not file the memory away. It can make the memory bigger, sharper, and more painful, like polishing a scar until it shines. This is why the Cringe can actually get worse with age. even as the event itself becomes more distant. The distance in time matters less than the emotional tag applied during each retrieval. You are not remembering the original event anymore. You are remembering the last 50 times you remembered it, and every one of those visits carried the same alarm. Now step outside the loop for a second. Who else is in that memory? There are people around you. You can picture some of them. Here is a question that usually lands like a cold hand. What did you eat for lunch on the Thursday after the embarrassing thing happened? You do not know. Nobody knows. And the people who were in that room have their own cringe replays, and none of those replays are about you. Psychologists have a name for this bias. It is called the spotlight effect. We massively overestimate how much other people notice and remember about us. In one classic study, participants wore an embarrassing t-shirt into a room and then guessed how many people noticed them. The guess was about twice as high as the real number. The gap is enormous, and it applies to your worst moments just as much as your t-shirt. So if the spotlight effect is real, why can't you just tell yourself the truth at 3 a.m. and stop the cringe? Because the cringe is not a belief. It is a reflex. It fires below the level of deliberate thought. The threat system can be fully convinced that the memory is a present danger, even while your rational brain insists that nobody remembers it. 3 a.m. is the worst time to have that argument, because your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of the brain that puts things in perspective, runs at low power in the middle of the night. The amygdala, meanwhile, never sleeps. So the standard advice, just let it go, fails because it asks a tired rational brain to argue with an armed emotional brain. You need a different tool, and the tool has nothing to do with suppressing the thought. That tool exists, and it has been tested carefully. The psychologist Ethan Kross and his colleague Özlem Ayduk spent years studying a technique called self-distancing. The method is simple. When you recall a painful memory, you do not relive it through your own eyes. You imagine yourself watching the scene from a distance, as if you were a fly on the wall or a stranger across the room. In their studies, participants were asked to describe a painful memory either from a first-person, immersed perspective, or from this third-person, distant perspective. Then the researchers measured what happened next. The self-immersed group relived the emotions and reported strong distress. The self-distanced group reported much less emotional reactivity, and their retelling of the memory was shorter, cleaner, and more factual. The same event. The same facts. The only difference was where the camera sat. The body confirms the effect. In one study, participants talked about a rejection experience while their blood pressure was measured. Not a self-report pillow, actual physiology. People who described the memory from a first-person perspective showed a significant rise in blood pressure while they spoke, a classic alarm response. People who described the same kind of memory from a self-distanced perspective showed almost no change. Their bodies stayed calm while their mouths told the story. And in a later session, the self-distanced group reported fewer intrusive replays of the memory. They had not forgotten the event. They had simply stopped reliving it. The threat tag had been removed. That is exactly the outcome you want at 3 a.m. Why does a camera angle change a threat signal? Because the brain derives part of its sense of danger from perspective. When you watch the scene from a distance, or from a neutral observer's spot, the memory loses its here and now urgency. Your body cannot fully prepare for a threat that is happening to someone else, even when that someone is an earlier version of you. Distance changes the appraisal from "this is happening to me" to "this happened to that person," and it is over. Once the event is categorized as finished, the threat system stands down. The embarrassment becomes information instead of danger. That is the whole trick. You are not arguing with the memory. You are changing its grammar. Here is what the science means for the 3 a.m. replay in concrete steps. When the cringe starts, do not push it away. Suppressing a thought makes it stronger, one of the most replicated findings in psychology. Instead, agree that the memory is real. Then change the camera. Rerun the scene a second time, but from the corner of the room. Watch the younger version of you say the awkward thing. Watch the other people react, or more likely, barely react. Then add the context that was missing at the time. What happened after? What did you do 5 minutes later? Did anyone bring it up again? Usually the answer is no. The memory, fully played out, is small. It is a 10-second moment inside a year with tens of thousands of minutes. You can even give the scene a narration, out loud if you are alone. Say it plainly. That person felt embarrassed for 10 seconds at age 14, and then everyone ate lunch. The act of putting the memory into explicit words recruits your prefrontal cortex and measurably lowers amygdala activity. Psychologists call this effect labeling. It is the same reason why writing about a painful memory in a journal reduces its sting over time. Each time you replay the scene with this new distance, the memory is restored with a softer tag. The reconsolidation that used to sharpen the cringe now grinds it down. The memory stays. It does not vanish, but the alarm loses its batteries. Here is what you get back. The cringe replay is not just a bad moment of sleep. It is a tax on every future decision you make. Every time you hesitate before raising your hand, before telling someone what you actually think, before trying a thing you might fail at in public, you are being priced by the threat response of a memory that is no longer happening. Once you learn to watch that memory as a story instead of a wound, the price drops to zero. You are not erasing your history. You are stopping an old alarm from deciding who you are today. You get your own vote back. That vote matters more than any 10th grade sentence ever did. The cringe replay is a relic. It was built for a small tribe where a social misstep could cost you food, shelter, or your place in the group. That tribe is gone. The people in the memory have moved on. The only person still assigning the punishment is you, and you get to stop. Not by pretending it never happened. Not by forgiving yourself in a dramatic ceremony. Just by taking the camera off your face, letting the scene play out from the corner of the room, and noticing that the room is empty. Let the kid drop the tray. The cafeteria stopped watching years ago.